A lot of people that become successful get to start in a garage. We didn't have that luxury. We had to do an employee handbook, and we had to do all the things that people expected that were coming from larger companies that we didn't have. It was a struggle. We didn't make money for 3.5 years. We cash flowed, but we didn't make money. And as I sat there and I struggled and I struggled and I struggled, and I was like, what do I go through? A layoff, shave expenses off? But every single time I came back to the only way to make money in this manufacturing business is
a leading voice in family business. You're listening to
The Family Biz Show. Welcome, everybody, to The Family Biz Show. I'm your host, Michael Palumbos, with Family Wealth and Legacy in Rochester, New York. Today, we've got a really cool show for you. So many different facets to the conversation we're about to have with Kevin Ellis, the CEO of Upstate Niagara Cooperative. Welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, glad to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me.
You got it. So Kevin is, I'm not going to steal his story because nobody's going to tell it better than you, but it's so interesting. From a family farm to today, running a cooperative with over 300 family farms in it. Kevin, we have a history of talking about, what was your journey? How in the world, how did you go from where you were to where you are today, kind of a thing?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Michael. Well, I grew up in a family farm operation in central New York, just south of Syracuse, a little town called Tully. And growing up, I don't know, we went from 100 cows to 200 cows to 300 cows, and that was about the time I was going to college. And I thought, well, I was on one or two paths. I was either going to go back to the family farm and expand it, or you want to be a veterinarian. So I went into animal science, and I always wanted to go to Cornell University. So I had one backup plan besides Cornell, but I went to Cornell University. I got accepted. And when about a year, I became really interested in business more than I did cows. So I took a mix of business courses, but I did have an animal science degree when I graduated. And believe it or not, I got into nutrition work for dairy cattle. Went to Nebraska and South Dakota, covered 3 states, did that for a couple years, came back, and I got into banking with the Farm Credit Administration.
Okay.
And you're going to find this little trend with me. I get bored easily. So then I got a little bit bored on the lending side, and they promoted me to become a consultant. So I was doing family transfers, farm business transfers. I was consulting on doing taxes. I was doing a lot of different things that the family farming actions. And then I always got tired of being labeled an ag guy, so I decided to go back and get my MBA so I could see what life was like on the other side of the fence. And went to the University of Rochester, Simon School, graduated with an MBA, and I got into commercial banking with KeyBank, and then real estate finance with Northwest Savings Bank. I had an opportunity to start up the Northwest Bank here in Rochester, New York. And I did that, and then one day I was growing that business here. I got a phone call from one of my old farmer clients that I had when I was at Farm Credit, saying that there's a group of farmers that wanted to build a processing plant, and they wanted to break away from one of the big co-ops, and wanted to know if I had any interest in leading that exercise. And I said, I'll give you a week to think about it. And my wife and I talked about it, and I said, this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to use an MBA. It's a startup. It's learning how to build a business from scratch. And I said, if I fail at it, I can always go back to banking. I mean, there's banker jobs everywhere. So I gave it a roll. We grew a business from 0 to $400 million in sales when I took this other position with Upstate Niagara Cooperative. So
you had farmers when you started. When you were at 400, how many farms were you at that point?
Well,
400 million rather. The
previous job before now, we had 33 farms, and this one here today, when I started was north of 300, but the industry consolidates, we're down right around 260 farms today, with more milk, more sales, revenue, all of that. And so I took the opportunity. I guess I'm a lifelong learner. I want to grow. And I wanted to see if I could run a $1.5 billion manufacturing company with 260 farmers and 1,800 employees, and see if I was man enough for it. And I guess they want me to sign another year or 5-year contract. So I guess I'm doing okay.
Go back to your roots. How many generations was the family farm at that point?
Yeah, my father broke off from my grandfather, so he really truly was a first-generation farmer.
Okay.
He grew up on a farm, but it was more, my grandfather didn't really press or push, and my dad wanted to be more innovative, and he did some innovative things that people thought he was crazy for, but he really, he set off on his own. So he, for all intents and purposes, I consider him a first-generation farmer.
Got it. Okay. So a cooperative's different than a typical corporation. And for our listeners who, you start talking about this farm co-op, have no idea, explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So here's how I explain it, and I'm not trying to be crass. A cooperative is a socialistic organization that acts and tries to make money. So what I mean by that is it's everything that's done in a cooperative is done out of a spirit of fairness. And, we're working on a deal right now. It's probably one of the largest deals that New York State's ever seen. And we're looking at it because only a few of our members are going to be able to service this one particular. But in order so that people aren't left out and they aren't able to participate because of their size, they want to participate, but they can't. We're coming out with an entire co-op-wide program that mirrors what this customer wants so that we can have a payment system that keeps everybody fair, So cooperatives are built so that there's no other way to describe it except it's socialistic. So I call it creature inside a capitalistic organization. We have what we call the commercial side of the business. We run manufacturing plants. We're very capitalistic. It's all about making profits.
Sure.
And then on the co-op side, it's all about how do we distribute those fairly.
Got it. So you've got, like you said, 265 farms. Most of those are family-owned farms, right? All family-owned farms that they have their own P&L. They run their own businesses, but then they're all band together inside of the cooperative.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And we have a diverse group of members. Some of our members are, 5,000 cows, completely automated, and really. And then we have the gamut all the way down to, we have some Amish farms, organic or Amish farms that still do a lot by hand, and then we have fully farms.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's a real diverse group. But I've always said this: farmers are farmers around the globe. They all typically think similarly.
Okay. Like, you're now the CEO of this co-op. What are some of the unique challenges of having all of these different farmers that kind of you report to them, but through the board, but that has to pose some very unique challenges?
Yeah, the uniqueness of it is this. A lot of Fortune, I guess, and we're not Fortune 500, but we are a large corporation. And I'm spending an exorbitant amount of time making sure that the farmers themselves and the board specifically are educated on how we make money, what we do, the complexity of the business, because they're governing the business, so they need to understand it at a deeper level than I think my predecessor had not done a great job letting them know how the business operates and how it ticks. So the challenge that I have is helping them understand so they can make better governance decisions. And, truly when you come off a farm and, these farms are bigger, right? They're multi-million-dollar revenue farms, but they're really overseeing a $1.5 billion business, and helping them understand how complex that is and understand what it means to run that business and what the business needs is really some of the struggle. But I think we're doing a good job.
So I was lucky enough to take a tour of one of these facilities, and it just kind of blew me away. What you are doing is providing that place for them to sell their milk. Then you take the milk and you turn it into, through the co-op, all kinds of different products for the people that you serve. And, to be doing $1.5 billion in revenue, you're very large corporations on the other side who are used to working from a very corporate standpoint. Does that pose some pretty unique challenges for the farmers to understand that? Or is that exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about and teaching them?
Yeah, I think some of the struggle there. Our farmers are really good. They've been a long time. They've been in a consumer products based for a long time, so they understand the customer is number one. I think where the struggle comes in is the average age of a farmer now is 65 plus years old, and what customers are asking for today, some of the older school farmers don't understand what is this and what's driving this, and they don't really understand the Gen Zers and the millennials and their wants and needs. So some of the we have to spend management team bridging that gap. And they're like, well, what do you mean they want to see how my farm workers live? It's none of their business. I'm like, well, everybody's got a video camera in their pocket now, so they really want to know where their food comes from. They want to know, were the animals humanely treated, and all these so we're rolling out all these programs to make sure our customers know that we have oversight over animal welfare. We're going to have ESG goals that are going to be incorporated into our strategy, and our worker care programs are top notch. So it's new for a lot of our farmers. They're like, well, what do they need that for? And that's invasive. I don't want to do that. But I always say this, if you want to make a product and you don't have a customer for it, that's called a hobby. So we've got to align what we make customers want. So that's some of what we do as a management team, is make sure we marry those up.
Got it. And then it's finding what the products are you putting to market? I mean, as a kid, we had whole milk and skim milk and cottage cheese and whatnot. But today, some of the products that you guys are coming out with are pretty unique. The world's changed. And you talk about that product a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. I do remember as a kid, he had very, very few selections for milk. Now you go to the case, and I don't know how many selections you have for milk. You probably have 30 different SKUs for milk alone. Yogurt is one thing that we make, and that's really taking off again, but it's high protein now. Cottage cheese, skyr, Greek yogurt, high protein stirred yogurt. Everything's protein. We're following that trend. So we have cultured plants, and they are all full, and we're trying to figure out how to get more capacity out of them, and we're also expanding one of them to make more capacity. And fluid milk is on decline. However, high protein fluid milk is the new. It's new in thing. Shared the other day that Fairlife, which was it's actually a 17-year-old company, recently became very successful. Just sold for $7 billion.
Wow!
So that's been very recent.
Okay, looking at these farms and the needs of the co-op, how do you balance the needs between the small guy? I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but can you expand on that a little bit more? The co-op has these big needs, your $1.5 billion business. How many employees are inside of there?
So just over 1,800 right now.
Yeah. And then you've got the farm that, the smallest that is part of the co-op. How many cows would they have?
Oh, 30, 40 cows on the small side.
And one or two employees running that, or
probably just
one farmer?
One farmer. Right.
Yeah. So how do you balance those needs with, what's going on for the co-op?
Well, I've always maintained a spirit of fairness. And as long as I always tell my management team this as well. On the co-op side, there's no winners or losers. We try to do the best possible job of getting them the most money for their milk. A, reducing their transportation costs. B, giving them dividend checks at the end of the year, making sure we run our commercial business profitable so they get a dividend check at the end of the year. And after that, I don't treat the 40 cow dairy any differently than the 5,000 cow dairy, because the way they run their farm is their decision. They're independent business people themselves. And if we've hit all those key areas that I just talked about correctly, they've got to do the math on their side. and say, business model correct or isn't it? Because what a large dairyman will have that the small dairyman doesn't have is you'll have a lot more labor costs. You'll have a lot more equipment costs. And so his model is different than the 40 cow dairyman who has probably no employees except himself, or there'll be a husband-wife team. And they'll probably do a lot of cash crops, and they'll do other things that generate money, or one of the spouses will work off the farm. So it's more of a lifestyle than it is a true business. So, but as long as we're treating everybody fairly, getting as much for the milk as we can, reducing their haul costs, and we're generating profits on the 13th milk check, I find that there is no dissension at the end of the day. The only dissension, or the only argument should be, is their business correct or is it not correct?
Family businesses are known for having to deal with succession planning, and family farms even more so.
Correct.
One of the differences that I've seen through the years is that, with the farmers, the kids get exposed to that business early on. And so they either love or hate it, very early on. And the ones that love it, it's just very natural. And unlike the dad that has a manufacturing construction business where the kid may not be involved until, they're much older. But what are some of the challenges that the co-op faces, in terms of succession for the family farms? Do you guys help them in any ways, or how do you support them through those processes?
True enough. I mean, so there's so many good qualified people that help with family farm transfers that we haven't had to get involved. We don't offer it as a member service. Oftentimes, all we get involved in is how do we transfer equity, because many of our family farms have millions of dollars of equity in our cooperative. So if they retire and they want to move it to another generation, that's the time when we become involved in making sure that we have a good transition plan on the cooperative side for that family farm. But there's good qualified people in this trade that we don't feel we need to compete. And I have plenty of referrals that I can give to our farmers if they need assistance or they need help. And when we're seeing more and more of it, a lot of what we're seeing is massive consolidation in our industry, because there hasn't been a pronounced change in the milk price the last 20 years. So how the farmers make money now is through consolidation, more cows, and higher productivity per cow. So that's where the profits are in the farming industry.
It's private equity. I mean, kind of thinking inside of the family farm as well. Yeah,
the M&A hasn't gotten involved yet. Most farmers are very traditional. Bank debt. It's profits and bank debt, profits and bank debt. So the investment is astounding to me. You're nearing $20,000 of investment per cow. So if you get these guys that have 5,000 cows, do the math. They're real businesses now.
Wow. Okay. Any advice, being somebody who came from a family farm, now working with farmers for the younger generations that are, coming up into the world in the family farm business and the co-op business, any advice that you'd give?
Yeah, I mean,
the next gen?
I will, because I go back and talk to Cornell kids every year that are going through these fellows programs. And one of the things I tell them is, if you grew up like me, my father didn't share much. He expected a lot work-wise. I would work 7 days, and I'm not even joking, 100 hours a week, helping that enterprise in summers. And I'd work in high school. I worked mornings, nights, weekends. And I never saw the financial side of it. So, and the farmers aren't really good about sharing. So I always thought Dad was one step away from bankruptcy. And then I went to college and I was doing an economics project, and I had to get a trend analysis. And, I talked to the banker. He said, it's fine. And I got his balance sheet, and I had some choice words for him, because we lived like we were bankrupt, but he was a multimillionaire. So that's how a lot of these farmers are. You just don't know. They drive around in old pickup trucks, and they're.
I think that's a lot to say for the owner.
Yeah.
I was in Cortland, New York, not far from Tully. My, associates just the other day, we're driving past this little, looks like Startup USA, and it was one of my top clients 10 years ago.
Right.
And he's like, he lived there, really? I'm like, yeah, and he drove a Chevy Camino. I remember the El Caminos.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, that was his favorite.
So what I always tell these kids that are coming out, if you've got an opportunity to go back to the farm, maybe go out and get a job somewhere else, learn, get some experience and make some mistakes on somebody else's dime. But don't discount the family farm, because if you want to gain wealth, you may not have all the cash in the world that you want to spend, but if you want to gain wealth, the family farm is a great way to gain wealth. But never, ever take your eye off on how, have a succession plan in place so that you can actually retire out of that business. Otherwise, it becomes a prison.
Yeah,
because it's so capital intense. You're gonna have to find a way to find out.
Land rich, resource rich, but
cash poor.
Cash poor. Yeah. You talked, the consolidation that's happening and the education that you help your farmers understand. What the customers are looking for nowadays. When it comes to the side of things, do you provide any training or any interaction with that, or is it the same kind of thing with the succession planning? There's plenty of people out there that could give advice.
Yeah, same thing. There's plenty of good people. I will lend my advice and experience as one of the people that used to do succession planning. However, I've been out of it long enough to know that I'm dangerous. Same thing. Lots of good qualified people out there that do this. I have a referral network if somebody really wants to talk to somebody. And more and more farmers, get labeled dumb farmers, but none of them are dumb. They know how to run a calculator and a pencil very well. So, what's driving that consolidation is just the cost of things today. It blows me away. A brand new chopper just to cut corn out of a field is now $1 million or more. So it's just the cost of running these enterprises is driving the consolidation and the growth. So yeah, that's life.
Nice. Okay. Are there any, talk about, innovation, the difference between, the 35, 40 cow farm and the 5,000 cow farm. What are some of the innovations that have happened in the last 5-10 years that farmers are taking advantage of today?
Yeah, so genetically, they've been taking advantage of the genetic, in the breeding programs that farms used to have when I was growing up. It was, you do both selections based on, milk and that. And the other thing, what's happening now on the breeding side is now they're super ovulating the best cows and then breeding them with the best bulls. So the genetic progression in this industry is unlike anything I've ever seen. It's taking off in an exponential fashion. And then this surprises me a lot because I grew up and I've been around farming my whole life, and I'm looking at the milk components that come into Upstate Niagara's plants today. And I'm asking questions like, are these Holsteins? Are these black and white cows? Because the components are so high. The genetic progress is going so fast. It's blowing my mind. What we used to have even 5 years ago it just blows my mind, Michael. As a dairy kid, I was like, I just can't believe this genetic progress. The other thing too is,
let me jump in on that for just a second.
Yeah.
So I just finished reading a book called The Next Wave, and it's talking about AI and robotics and a whole bunch of other things, but and genetics being one of them. And so as you're talking about it, and you just said over the last couple of years, what's happening genetic side of this stuff is mind-blowing to you.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what the next 5 to 10 years looks like as they're able to start taking, and, as you said, people say the dumb farmer, but there is no such thing as that. As they take products like AI that can now take the ideas and the things that they're thinking about and make it run that much faster, what genetic world would look like 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah, and right now the genetic testing, you take just other ears, you can that testing has become so inexpensive now. We can start to look for in the cows, and decide, which cows do we want to breed based on these markers, because this marker actually leads to a higher cheese yield, and that's worth more. So that cow is worth more. So we can actually super ovulate that cow, and then we'll breed for cheese production. So it's getting very, very specific and dialed in. That's
amazing.
It is amazing. So that's just the genetic side. Into the technology side, we've got a 3,000 cow dairy farmer that's a member. The lights out parlor, it's completely roboticized. So it's robots milking cows on a rotary carousel parlor system. And we have other farms that are going to robotics. So there's different variations of robotics, but I see a future state where there's no human intervention milking cows anymore. It's completely roboticized. We have robotics, cleaning barns, robotics, pushing feed to cows. There will become a day when there's not a man in a tractor anymore either. Today there is, only to turn around at the end of the field. John Deere's got some incredible technology. They call it My John Deere. It basically does a yield grid of every field at the end of the year, so it knows the yield per square foot, square inch, whatever you want. And then you can do targeted fertilizer application the next year based on the yield data from the harvest data off of My John Deere. And planting rates can change on grid maps, and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah. And I want to make sure that hearing what you just said and understanding whatever industry you're in, be looking for those technological advances, be looking for the data, be looking for how to utilize AI at different levels than your competitor. That's really, the difference isn't going to be whether I use AI or not use AI. I think everybody's going to be using it. It's the people that learn to utilize all of the technology that's available to us at a different level. There's going to be very few industries that won't continue to use or technology at some levels. So
yeah, 100%. And I'm pushing I have a controls group at Upstate, and a program right now where they're basically teaching people how to use AI to program PLC logic. So I'm pushing the group to say, use AI to program the plants, so you don't have to wake up at 2 a.m. and do it and have a staff of people doing it. It could be 2 people in AI programming all of our plants.
Wow. Family farms typically have very deep roots in the community. Mm-hmm. And just doing a little bit of history on your co-op, there's some pretty deep roots there as well. Talk, how do you guys give back to the community, some of the deep roots that you have within the community?
Yeah. I always say this, you gotta be careful. Don't ever say anything bad to any farmer about another farmer, because they're all related. And it's true. So the way we give back, we have a balanced scorecard at Upstate. We try to give back through product donations. We give back cash. We're always trying to give back to the communities that we live and serve in. Many of our farmers are so active. They've been in the community so long. They're on church boards and school boards and, the IDA boards, and they're super, super involved, super active. And many of our farmers are just as giving as we are as a corporation. They product donations in their own schools and wherever they can. And, we're being owned by farmers, we're community minded. We got to be careful. We're going to be around a while. If we're going to be around a while, we got to care about our communities.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
When you look at today, talk about the broader conversation around like food security and sustainable agriculture. You had hit on that a bit before, but can you expand on that? What you see coming in the future?
Yes, and it may be changing right now, but people are anti-agriculture. But there's a belief that animal production agriculture is leading the greenhouse gas and the global warming effect and all of that. I find that very bizarre, because I came across a statistic here that if you go back to 1926, we had 26 million cows in America. producing 1/3 of the milk that we produce today. Today we have 9 million cows in America. So we've gone from 26 million cows to 9 million cows, but we are the problem with global warming. So I find I take a little offense to that, but I'm not saying that we're not going to do anything. I'm just saying that I find it fascinating as a society how we can just jump to conclusions and not really do the hard work exactly where global climate change is coming from. But what we're doing as a company is we have to do what the consumers want. So we are in the process of going through a materiality study right now, and we're going to do a double materiality study because we're going to start to incorporate the ESG goals for our cooperative based on our stakeholders' wants and needs. And we're going to weight the customers. We're going to weight that a little bit heavier with the stakeholder that we want to know what are they looking for. So they want us to plant wildflowers that make them feel good, save the honeybees, decrease carbon, emissions for sure. That's something we're working on straight away anyway. And what else is it they want to see from dairy farmers? And we're going to incorporate that into our materiality study, so that goes into our strategic plan long term. What do they want to know about how we treat our workers? What do they want to know about everything else that we're doing? Because we want to become an open book, because our consumers of today want us to be an open book. Yeah. My long-term goal is to be able to put a scan code on a cup of yogurt, and somebody can go to that, and they can see the farm it came from and what the farm's doing to, become sustainable from a standpoint of lowering gas, carbon emissions, and what are they doing as far as improving waterways and those types of things. So that's a longer term role, but that's not too far away. Once we have SAP installed, we can do blockchain.
Nice. Your vision for the future. So not the family farm side of it, but on the co-op side, co-ops looking down 10 years from now, what do you see? What does the future look like?
Yeah, I want to stay lockstep with what consumers dairy products. And we are very shifting from, we used to be a very heavily based fresh fluid milk business, shifting that into we're going to be a cultured dairy business. I see just a long-term trend of increased sales, consumption of cultured dairy, yogurts and skiers and drinkable yogurt versus, the fresh products. So I want to continue that track, which is why we're doing an expansion. Really want to shift the fresh fluid business into more of a long-lasting milk business, but based on high protein. And then just have some varied products that speak to different things. We're going to have more product launches. We're going to be targeting different types of people. So we're not just going to say, yeah, here's a gallon of whole milk. You got to drink it. We're going to be targeting customers. We're trying to grow some of our brands right now. We're doing brand summits and just looking to grow some of them. We have a brand called Intense. It drives me crazy because it's loaded with sugar. And, our purpose statement is we nourish life. And I have a hard time offering a product with, 50 grams of sugar that says we nourish life. So I want to do some extensions off that and do some high protein, no sugar added, different variations, lactose free, and really get on trend. So we're going to be focused on getting on consumer trends, staying there, because ultimately that'll lead to the highest returns to our farmer members.
I think what you just said is really important for other CEOs, especially inside of the family businesses. How do you follow the trends? I mean, you're taking, to me, who's an outsider in the milk industry, you're taking milk, and then you talk about protein, you talk about the cultured products. How are you staying in front of what's coming down the road? And I do see, the products have changed dramatically, even, from my as a consumer. How do you stay in front of all that?
Yeah, we use, we have our own marketing department. We watch trends using Circana data, IRI data that we see, what kinds are moving. ACVs around those products, just to keep an eye on them. Also, farmers pay 15 cents of every 100 pounds of milk that they sell into a trade promotion group. They call it Dairy Management Inc. Dairy Management Inc. Does a lot of consumer research to try to help farmers pick up on where the consumer trends are going. So I say that that's free, but it's not free. I mean, it's 15. Farmers are paying for it. So they provide a lot of great input and insights into where we need to go hunt next. So they're trying to stay ahead of that cycle. So other than that, we're all consumers. I always tell everybody at the company, we're all consumers. If you think there's a great idea, get it floated up, and we'll take a look at it.
What are the challenges as the CEO of a co-op with as many, 1,800 employees, you said?
Yeah.
What are the challenges you're facing?
Well, this, Michael, the biggest challenge I'm facing right now is that I'm a different leader than the previous leader. And so we're in a transformation phase right now of reversing a top-down culture to a bottom-up culture. And that has been probably the hardest transition that I've ever had to work through in my entire career. So it's a struggle. Some days it feels like one step forward and two steps back, but I feel like we are making progress. Some of the changes that we're putting in effect are starting to show through with improvements in operations and improvements in profitability. So it seems to be working.
So that scenario sounds an awful lot like potentially Dad did it a certain way for many, many years. The younger son or the younger daughter comes in to take over, and they've got their MBA, and they've got they've got 5 years working out, for another competitor in another industry, and they can bring back all these great ideas. That's when you got the employees, 100 employees, so the challenges that you're facing, they're real. And it's a lot of people, and it's many, many years. How long had the previous CEO been in place?
I think he was there for 13 years previously.
Yeah, and that's a long time for a lot of people to get ingrained with how we've always done things.
Oh, yeah.
What would you say are some of the bigger successful things that you've initiated that when you look back today, when you walked in the door, you weren't sure whether they were going to work or not work within the company, but they're starting to make trends now?
Oh, there's so many. So one of the first things I had to do was I had to change this mentality around operations. I guess I had the benefit of starting a greenfield project up with people that had never run a dairy plant before. And we were, when we started up, I always say this, like a lot of people that become successful get to start in a garage, and we didn't have that luxury. We started up day one with 90 employees. So we had to do, an employee handbook, and we had to do all the things that people expected that were coming from larger companies that we didn't have. I mean, we had a blank slate. One of the things that really was a struggle was we didn't make money for 3.5 years. We cash flowed, but we didn't make money because we had heavy depreciation and interest costs because we levered it up. Everything was new, and it was a struggle. And as I sat there and I struggled and I struggled and I struggled, I was like, what do I go through a layoff? Do I can shave expenses off? But every single time I came back to the only way to make money in this manufacturing business is high output. You're not going to, I always say this, you're not going to cost cut your way to prosperity. So at Upstate, I almost walked back out the door because they were doing the same thing that I did not to do in my previous role, was that they had just leaned out the entire organization. And then they went too far because then leaning out the organization, then COVID hit. And they got leaned out another tranche. So when I arrived, we had lines of business that were completely sold out, oversold. And I'd go to the factory and the lines weren't running. And I'd ask questions like, well, why isn't this line running? We can sell as much as possible off that line. Oh, well, we don't want to cover breaks and lunches. I'm like, so I spent the first year just getting everything staffed properly so we could run the operation so that we could actually start to make money on those lines. So that one actually had the biggest impact because people started to finally say, wow, we're finding we can actually run the plants like we should be able to run the plants. The other thing too is we didn't have alignment. We were running, 4 ERP systems, 5 if you include our membership division. Nobody had insights into what anybody else was doing. The plant managers had never met each other when I first got here. They'd seen each other on like a, Teams call or a Zoom call.
Sure.
So we started to get the plant managers together, and we started to drive towards alignment of what was important to run our operations. And the other thing that came out was with a balanced scorecard approach. The previous management team cared about profits, so it wasn't balanced. So we came out with a balanced scorecard that basically covers, our communities, our people, our customers, our operations, and then profit is a result. It's never what you're truly esteemed to be. If you do everything else right, if you do everything else right, you're going to get profits. So that's a scorecard. It's not anything other than that. So I think getting that message out in that home every day has made progress. And I still have people that still have PTSD from the old days. I just can't seem to get their thinking where I need to get their thinking.
That's okay. Slow and steady wins the race.
I kind of remind myself of that.
Most CEOs are not known for their patience and putting that stuff together. Understood. What else? Hey, so you've got a vision for the future. You have come in, and how long have you been there now?
It's been 2.5 years.
Yeah. So in 2.5 years, you've made several areas that you've positively impacted the organization. What are the other things that are, what are the projects that, you're about to start aligning ERP, and you're talking about SAP, getting those things aligned so you can dive into the data more. What are the other projects?
Yeah. SAP is going to be the big one this year and next year. We're going to go, we're going to go fast. We're going to do this in 18 months. We're going to do some line extensions on what we already do. We're building out one of our factories to do more Greek skyr production plus cottage cheese. We're going to look at expanding into drinkable yogurts and focused on high protein drinkable yogurts. Looking at there's some new technologies that I've come across that can extend the shelf life on fresh. So that is a high priority for me right now because it'll change our distribution and our production plants dramatically. It'll just, I call it a disruptor. This one makes me smile. It is a completer to our industry. So I'm chasing this one very hard. And on top of that, we're looking to expand out some of our ready-to-drink beverage lines. We've been sold out on those forever, so it's time to expand them out. So the aluminum cans, although we have an aluminum tariff that we're faced with right now. So, but by the time we get the expansion done, it'll have worked its way through. Yeah. Other than that, I've longer term. The only thing that we don't make is a dairy company that we should is cheese. So we had a cheese plant. I'd like to take a run at some soft specialty cheeses because we do have about 40% of the population within a day's drive of where we are right now.
Okay. All right. So we talked about, your for the future, the projects that you're working on. Talk about what's a day in the life of a CEO of a $1.5 billion organization look like?
There is no standard day, Michael. I don't know. Every day looks different. Yeah. I usually try to start my Mondays by meeting with my team and get my team aligned, talking about all the initiatives that we're working on. We have unionized facilities. So some of what I do is work through union negotiations, usually when we get to the final point that needs approval. I'm working on people initiatives and trying to do with communicating, and I just brought in a communications expert, so we've started our own little fireside chat that we're calling it to keep the people in the organization understanding what we're up to and try to communicate with them on a more regular basis. And then you kind of get dragged down. I always say this, nobody comes in my office with good news. So you usually get dragged in some problems that we may be having with a customer. We're not fulfilling customers' needs. We've got a breakdown. We've got capital decisions that need to be made. You know, I came in here right before I came in here. I was working through some capital requests that people had asked for, and then it's you know, I talked to my board chairman and then keeping the board aligned with what's happening on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. And for me, I get bored if it's the same thing every day. I always say this. I think I found the right role for me because as CEO, I've never really truly been bored. There's always something going on that needs attention.
Okay.
And even if there's not, if it's not broke, break it. See if we can make it better. So I'm always wired to have new initiatives going on, and yeah, to me it's fun. You know, I understand I understand this enterprise now from the farm all the way through so
Love it.
yeah. And I can't keep my fingers out of sales. I have sales and marketing, so I'm always meeting with customers.
Talk about life outside of work. What drives you outside of work?
You know, not a lot right now. One of the things I have to do is to keep my levels up. I have to go to the gym every day. So I go to the gym every day. I've set personal goals. I have my private pilot's license. My personal goal is to get back and start flying for business or otherwise recreationally. And I know I spend way too much in my left brain. I got to get back in my right brain. I've always wanted to play the guitar. I played the piano growing up, but so I recently bought a guitar. I'm going to start taking guitar lessons just to start to mellow out the light of my brain. So
it must be in the water. You're the third person I'm telling you this week that somebody talking to them, they're like, I pick up guitar. One of them just started his lessons, and I was like, so it's just kind of must be in the water right now.
It must be.
And what else do you? So pilot's license, that's a big one. Would you fly between the different locations or?
Oh, 100%.
Nice.
Yeah. I'd like to get a Bearcraft. I'd like to get certified in multi-engine so I could go to Florida.
Love it. I at one time thought about doing that, but that was it just never materialized. I spend most of my time underwater when I have free time, so that's okay. You spend some time talking to Cornell kids. Talk about if you classes that you're talking to. What is the advice that you're giving them today? What are the things that you're talking about with the up and coming kids again?
Yeah, it just depends on the class that they're going through. I still remember myself as a Cornell kid, so I try to give them advice. And I really appreciated the people that always came back and took the time to come talk to the students. So I try to make that time. And, I'll talk to them about varied tasks, or topics of, milk marketing. And one of the things that I avoided when I was at Cornell was milk marketing. And now what do I do for a living? Milk marketing. And so, I'll help them understand that from a practical standpoint, why they should pay attention. I can talk about finance and, what it takes to ready yourself to take a position like mine, because they're all, I always laugh. I could still see myself as one of the kids sitting in the class. They look at me and just astounded at, what I'm doing. And, I think people get caught up with the CEO title. So I try to help them understand what do you do to get into this kind of a role, and just give them some fatherly advice, because they are still kids and
get easily bored and be a constant learner, right?
And I still chuckle, that they try to, they'll look up with me on LinkedIn, and then I follow them. And it's kind of funny. A couple of them have come to me for advice to go back to the family farm, and they have. And they're back, and they seem happy and content. So,
you just hit on something that I want to share with people. When I look back at my career, one of the things that I didn't do enough, that I wish I had done more of, is reached back to people that were in higher positions or had more authority or more, knowledge than I did, and ask for that help. Mm-hmm. And because every time I did it, every single time, somebody was there to reach back out and give me a hand and willing to answer a question. That leg up that I got at that moment really helped. But in hindsight, I look back and said, I did not do that enough. So if you're listening to this and, you've got a family business that you're working in and you need some advice, find somebody that's already been there, done that. They're happy to help you with that.
Oh, every time, 100%. It gave me joy. I could help one of these kids.
You said that you're a learner. Are you a reader?
I do, but now I drive a lot, so I do Audible, which I don't call reading, but I listen to books and I read.
That's all right. What in the last year or two, what were some of the books that you read that you said, "Oh my, great books"?
Oh, I'm trying to remember. I just went through the one with Adam Grant, Think Different. That one, I really like that. I really come to really appreciate Adam Grant and the way he looks at things. So I really liked. I don't know if you've read that one or not. Yeah, Adam Grant, Think Different was a good one. And then I keep going back through some of the oldies but goodies. I mean, Good to Great was another one. And again, there's so many. I always pick up new nuggets on that one when I read through it again. So, but yeah, I'm in a lull right now, Michael. I gotta get going again.
All good. Kevin, I would sharing just to go from the family farm to a $1.5 billion organization, you have to understand when the kids look at you and go, wow, it is wow. And you've got a lot to be proud of. And I really appreciate you sharing, what you're going through. It's also interesting from our perspective to know that, inside of this $1.5 billion organization, that there's still a lot of things that you've got to work on and that you're trying to clean up. And, so wherever you are in your business, listener, just know that, we're all constantly working to improve and get better at what we're doing, regardless of the size of the organization. There is no perfect, there's always a work in progress.
Yeah, there is no perfect. And when you think you've got it licked, and the consumer trends will change on you, and then all of a sudden you're changing again.
Yeah. So Kevin Ellis, Upstate Niagara Cooperative, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate it. My name's Michael Palumbos with Family Wealth and Legacy in Rochester, New York, and you've been listening to The Family Biz Show. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day. Take care. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.